Long before you enter any of the Bornholm round churches, you notice inconsistence with the idea that these churches could be made with a defense purpose. Strangely, all 4 round churches are located on plain surface. All previous defense structures on Bornholm, known as Gamleborg, Lilleborg, Hammershus, etc., are all of course located on hilltops, making use of the landscape and its optimal possibilities. But here we see how the hilltop is next to the church, giving the advantage of the height to the strikers. This church is placed downhill on flat ground. It is not because we have lacks of hilltops on the hilly island, so if you are looking for a good location for a church intended to be a defense structure, you would have found another site than the exact point where this church is located. And this inconsistency applied to all 4 of the island's round churches. Already here, the hypothesis about a defense purpose begins to crumble. It simply cannot fit. When we talk about the defense structure, we are surprised to notice that there is no defense aimed specific for the entrance. To the right, we see an extension to the church. This is not part of the original church. Originally, the church was an even cylinder. Strangely enough, there are actually 2 entrances. One here to the south and another over here to the north. In a while we can study this a little closer. But none of these entrances are protected by defense arrangements, which is standard for medieval strongholds. It has been suggested that this small bell tower originally could have protected the entrances, in which case it should have been staffed with defenders. That idea is of course completely absurd, because why should one divide the defense force into 2 groups and place one group in a small and low isolated tower so easily conquered? Now we move towards the northern entrance. On our way, we notice an opening, which is part of the original church. Here it has been suggested there was an extension with a defense purpose. The strange of this is, though, that this extension is neither covering the northern entrance nor the southern entrance. It is exactly in the middle, from where the entrances cannot be seen. Now we are approaching the northern entrance, and here is no defense arrangement, so that it would be possible to shoot an enemy if the enemy tried to force the entrance. So also here it is clear that the idea of defense is absurd. In a stronghold, it is very vulnerable to have more than one entrances. It is generally believed the south door was for men and the north door was meant for the women, so that they could enter and sit separately in the church. But in the early days there were no sitting places in the church. All were standing processions during the service. Further, everyone before entrance had to be sanctified by the holy water placed next to the southern door. Thus, the northern gate was more likely reserved for special burials. For instance, we know after a funeral in the Cistercian churches, the coffin was always carried out through the northern exit. This is the southern entrance. The holy water would have been placed here to the left, and everybody had to dip their fingers in the water and sanctify their body through the sign of the cross upon entering the church. The entrance over here to the north, which we can still see today, has probably been reserved for very special rituals. The round church is constructed around a single central pillar with a surrounding wall going from the pillar into the outer wall. This type of construction is typical for all 4 round churches on Bornholm and distinguishes them from almost all other round churches in the whole of Scandinavia. In this church of Østervars, the central pillar is hollow. No other church in Scandinavia has this special design. But we find an exact similar design in the Templar church Convento de Cristo in Tomar in Portugal. The central pillar in this church has unfortunately been fundamentally modified. The 6 openings you see here has been cut larger so that today you can see from the pulpit into the compartment inside the pillar. This change is probably triggered by an incident where the priest found members of the congregation playing cards during the service. Before that, the openings was only about 1.50 meter high. As today the rotunda had 6 openings and 6 pillars, but all 12 were with exact same measure, forming a perfect polygon with 12 sides orientated carefully towards the 4 corners of the world. This has now been irreparably damaged by cutting the openings to their present height and leaving a free view from the pulpit to the compartment. This is the staircase to the upper floors. As support for the defense hypothesis, it has been argued that the staircase is running on this side of the church wall because it means an attacker cannot use his right arm with a sword, while the defenders facing him have their right arm free. But in the round church of Olska, the staircase is running on the opposite side of the wall. I guess they have all been left-handed in Olska then. Note that apart from this far-fetched hypothesis about the so intelligent placing of the staircase, there is absolutely no arrangements which would make it possible for the defenders to shoot from the upper floor, should an enemy get as far as to the entrance of the staircase. Now we shall look at something strange. Here the staircase turns to the left and then apparently enters directly into the wall. On an old drawing you can see the staircase originally has been a spiral leading from the downstairs chorus to the upstairs chorus. Only priests had access to the most holy part of the church, the chorus. Thus, the staircase must have been reserved for the priest, or maybe certain initiated members of the congregation. To continue today, you have to turn right, where the following steps lead you up to the only entrance and exit in the 2nd floor. In all other medieval churches on Bornholm, the 2nd floor has 2 door openings, one leading to the downstairs staircase and one leading to the upstairs staircase. In this church, however, there is no longer access to the room above the chorus. Thus, the 2 staircases have now been unified and connected to the same opening. Now we have entered the 2nd floor. Here we find the original opening, which could not have been used as a defense for any of the 2 downstairs doors, because it is situated right between the 2 doors, and thus you cannot from here see any of the vulnerable entrances in the church. But probably you would have been able to bring something from the outside up to this level, maybe something to be stored in the church. As I mentioned before, the central pillar is going all the way through the church from the bottom to the top, and is hollow all the way through, as you can see here. And interestingly, there is a particular set of openings in this pillar leading all the way across the center of the church and further to an opening to the outside. Now we shall try to see if we can see through the pillar and catch the light from the outside. It's a little difficult because they have made a banister, but let us see if we can catch the light from the outside. Yes, here it is. Light coming from an opening in the church wall to the outside, crossing the center of the church through 2 openings in the hollow pillar and going straight to the opposite church wall. Here, right through these openings, we have the first beam of the rising sun on the day of the winter solstices. And here we have the first hint to what might have been the real purpose behind the construction of the upper floors in this church, and that this has nothing to do with a military defense. Also, we can see that the openings could have nothing to do with archers. If they have had guns, then yes, it would have been possible to shoot from this opening, but with a longbow from the 12th century, there is absolutely no space enough for the archer. Now I will show you the opening in the church wall on the opposite side of the openings through the pillar, the opening which catches the first beam of the rising sun on the day of the winter solstices. This is the opening in the pillar pointing through the center of the church, and if we turn 180 degrees, we see the opening to catch the glare from the outside. I can promise you, it is fantastic to experience this event. You wait in the completely dark church, and suddenly the first beam of the rising sun cuts through the diameter of the church exactly like a flaming sword, penetrating the darkness and marking that now, on this day, the year turns and the light takes again the power over the darkness. Now we will step up to the next floor, which in this connection is the most exciting of them all, because it is up here we probably can find the answer to what the real purpose is behind constructing this church in 3 levels. When we look at the masonry, we can see the traces from the original outer wall. We can see a trail in the masonry marking the original height of a masonry rail surrounding this original open course. The major argument for the defense hypothesis is the notion that this wall, surrounding the open aisle around the church, once functioned as a parapet. But the height of this supposed parapet is all around only 80 centimeters, 32 inches, which means it cannot even reach up to your belly button. Thus, it could never have given the necessary shielding for archers. Thus, we shall examine the existing openings in the wall behind the open aisle. The church have 8 such openings. As we can see, this opening here is aligned with a similar opening in the hollow central pillar, like the alignments we found in the floor below. On the drafting we can see how this alignment is aligned with an opening on the opposite wall. From the direction we can suggest opening 8 has been designed to catch the last beam of the setting sun on the day of the summer solstice, while opening 4 is designed to catch the first beam of the rising sun on the winter solstice, like the alignments found in the lower floor. While we follow the course, we can see how the openings here are carefully done. The rough granite stone has been substituted with limestone, easier to work. The stone has been cut with straight, sharp edges, carefully following the plumb line. This means that if you look at an angle, you see how it would have been possible for the opening to catch, for instance, a sunbeam and mark its exact horizontal position on a particular day of the year. At the same time, you can see how this opening is precisely aligned with a similar opening into the hollow central pillar. Thus, the openings are consciously aligned, and in a while we shall see how the aligned opening in the central pillar likewise is very carefully finished. Here we can see this church is not perfect round. Here the round shape has been substituted with a straight line. this part of the church is pointing towards east. So we have a corner to the one side, marking the sunrise of the winter solstice. Then we have the direction towards east, marked through this opening in the center of the straight wall. And then, over in the second corner, we find another opening carefully aligned to catch the first beam of the rising sun on the summer solstice. And as we can see, again the opening is very carefully cut. Here again we find a little detail completely contradicting the hypothesis of defense purpose. This opening is pointing towards north, and notably it is situated lower than the other 7 openings. From the inside, this gives a view to the northern sky and to the celestial pole, but not to anything on the ground. It is located behind the roofed staircase. Had it been placed in front of the staircase, one could have guessed it might have to do with the possibility to defend the entrance to this floor. But here, on front of the staircase, are no openings. This makes it clear that none of the arrangement on this floor has to do with defending the church from an enemy. Now we can enter into the inner part. Remember, the aisle on the other side of this wall was once in the open air, but here we are inside a roofed compartment. The point to notice here is that we are going some steps down. Actually, we are going about a meter down from the floor in the aisle. And this is strange, because if one believes this room should have to do with defense, we can see the openings to the outside is now above our head. From the outside, it would have been easy to shoot into this room, but to shoot from this room and out is simply impossible. With the exception of this opening towards north, which distinguishes itself from the other openings by its lower position. This might consolidate the hypothesis that the other openings have to do with the movement of the sun. The only direction where you never see the sun is towards north. This opening is the one to catch the first beam of the rising sun on the summer solstice. When the sun lit up the opening, a remarkable reflection becomes visible on the opposite wall. We find a hole in the wall at this place, but it could be a coincidence. Now I will try to enter into the hollow central pillar with its 3 openings aligned with 3 openings in the outer wall. It is very dark in here. 2 of the openings here are sitting very low. This consolidates the hypothesis that the purpose of the alignment is to catch a particular sunbeam, since the sun would shine downwards through the openings. You can also see once again how carefully these openings are done. And why should one make such carefully done openings in such a little compartment, like this? Here is not room for more than 4 to 5 people. Not if they should be able to raise their hands. The opening I was talking about, which is aligned to the sunbeam from the setting sun on the summer solstice, can be found high up on the pillar. In contrast to the 2 other openings, this one is placed high because it is designed to catch a horizontal beam from the setting sun. The beam is catched by this opening in the outer wall and ongoing to the opening in the hollow central pillar. To imagine that this could have anything to do with defense is absurd. Because, as you can see, the surrounding wall around the outer aisle is below the belly button and thus not designed for protection against an enemy's arrows. And if we imagine the defenders should retreat to the inner rotunda, it would not be possible from here to shoot at the enemy when the enemy are closer than 70 meters from the church. from this place it would simply not be possible to see the enemy within this distance. No, the design is made for another purpose. The reason we have to step down from the aisle to the inner rotunda has to do with the purpose of catching different sunbeams during the day and during the year, and leading particular sunbeams to aligned openings with the purpose of marking date and time, and thus creating a unique calendar within a celestial observatory. 400 years before the earliest known celestial observatories in the Christian Europe.